Hi, friends. You are listening to the EntreEd Talk podcast, where we feature amazing educators and entrepreneurs showcasing how you can bring entrepreneurship into the classroom. We believe entrepreneurship is for everyone. I am your host, Toy Hirschman, and I am so glad you chose to join me on this journey. Let's go. All right. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another exciting episode of the EntreEd Talk podcast. I am delighted to have with me Doan Winkel. This is his second time around, which is really exciting. We like to get the coolest people back twice. And if you've only been on once and you haven't been back twice, trust me, you will be.
Come back for more pain and punishment. So
it's what we like to do, inflict pain and punishment. You were actually back episode 31. So that's kind of cool. Now we're at, I think you'll be 105, I believe. So that's
nice.
So Doan leads the entrepreneurship program at Carroll University, and his passion is giving students a voice and motivating younger generations to tackle their dreams through creating their own careers. Before joining the Carroll family, he was an assistant professor of entrepreneurship and associate director of the Means Center for Entrepreneurial Studies at Illinois State University. I am so excited to talk to you more about your experiential learning techniques and your methods, because that's something that we're at EntreEd really passionate about also. So Doan teaches entrepreneurship courses and the entrepreneurship minor for undergrads and in the MBA program. And his teaching interests include creativity, innovation, lean startup, and new venture creation. And his passion is to bring an experiential approach to his students. So welcome, Doan. Welcome back.
Yeah, thank you. Always good to see you and catch up. So I appreciate the time.
Yes, likewise. So you have a ton of stuff going on, and I would love for you to kind of give us the mile-high overview of some of the new things that you're doing, and then we can kind of dive into each one. This is really exciting stuff.
Sure. Yeah. So we are slowly kind of piece by piece revamping our entrepreneurship minor to just kind of make it more experiential and more engaging and more kind of relevant to the life that students are going to lead after school. So we've got that going on. We launched a Master of Science in Innovation and Entrepreneurship program last fall, because why not launch a master's program in a pandemic?
Right.
So that's interesting. I'll say that's interest. We'll call it interesting. That's been an interesting experience. And what else? We got Food Buggy. So we launched this sort of student venture. It's kind of like think of it like a mini food truck. And then thanks to some generosity from Verizon Foundation, we started doing some work in a neighborhood close to campus here, and really starting at least as much as we could during the pandemic to dive deep and start to build some relationships and do some pretty interesting research in a neighborhood here close to campus. So I'm sure there's about 10 other things I can't think of at the moment, but those are the big ones going on. That's
awesome. So can you tell us a little bit more about the minor? I watched the video, and it's really fun, and it looks really engaging. Can you tell us what's different about the minor as compared to what was before?
Yeah, so we really just tried to kind of take it piece by piece and think about, like, what skills do we want to teach students and what skills do we want students to be practicing? And I take this approach personally, and then my colleagues here at Carroll are mostly on the same page, or at least in the same neighborhood, that these students that go through a program are going to have a job after college, so they should be prepared for whatever that job is and whatever the world may look like, which means a whole bunch of uncertainty because they don't know what job they're going to get and they don't know what the world's going to look like. So essentially, they should be prepared for uncertainty. And so they should be building skills that prepare them for uncertainty. And so that's kind of the approach we take. It really is more of a skill building approach. And so we really started to kind of strip away some of the courses and rebuild them a little bit, reimagine them around the kinds of things that, we think are going to be fruitful for students no matter what their career path is, right? And so it's, the whole kind of just creative thinking, right? And exercising the creative muscles, getting back to that. And then it's looking at opportunities, and it's working with ideas and identifying problems and interviewing customers and experimentation, right? And running experiments, prototyping, whatever you want to call it. And so it's a lot of the same language that a lot of people use. We just really kind of approach it from a very direct and very intentional skill building approach. So they do it over and over and over and over and over again.
I like that. That's what we talk about that at EntreEd all the time, about how we try to give students year over year experience from, we're looking at a lot of times, pre-K through 14, and so having that exposure. And my favorite line is, I like to say, you can't learn how to swim in the library.
Right, exactly. And that's, I for better or worse, I think that a lot of people are passing the buck with this generation. Not with a lot of people pass the buck with people who find themselves at this life stage in terms of college, right? Where parents are kind of going like, well, it's college's job. And college is going, well, it's the parents' job. And professors are just saying like, nope, I'm not here to prepare them for a career. I'm here to like teach them something or give them knowledge, right? So everybody's passing the buck. And so what happens is students leave college and they have no clue what they're getting into, and they're totally unprepared because everybody's passed the buck. And so we just kind of looked at it and said, we're not going to pass the buck.
Yeah, I like that. So where is the largest population from? Is there a specific major that you get most of your students from for the minor, or is it all over the board?
No, it really is all over the board. It's one of the things I really enjoy about John Carroll and the program we have is it really is, it's truly about 50-50 representation from College of Business and the College of Arts and Sciences. And so it really does span across campus. We do have students in the minor from almost every major. We get a lot from communications department, from exercise science department, but it sort of ebbs and flows, right? But it really is a joy because there's such a diverse mix of majors represented from sciences, from humanities, from business disciplines. So it makes a really rich classroom.
That's awesome. I bet it does. I know that there's been a big push lately for engineering students to take entrepreneurship because they have a lot of these skills, but they don't know how to apply them. They don't, they can build things and wire things. And I was one of them. And I got out, I had no clue what I was doing. But it's nice because even if they don't become an entrepreneur right out of the gate, that option is always there for them. And even those skill sets are going to be useful, even if they never become an entrepreneur.
Right, absolutely. No, I think that they certainly are a population that is prime for getting some of this, right? It's difficult because they don't have a whole lot of space in their schedule. If you're taking engineering, you're pretty full up. But it's that way. It's sort of pairing up that kind of thinking and that kind of career path with what I think, in my opinion, what I think entrepreneurship can offer, not necessarily in the startup approach, but in more of that mindset type of approach. I think it marries well. I think it marries well with anything. I don't care what career path you go down, right? But yeah, the engineers and architects and some of those more kind of builder type folks, I think really benefit from it.
Yeah, I mean it's so applicable and in every single aspect, and we talk about that all the time. It fits everywhere because it's just good life skills to have, right? It's just they're really important things for anyone to know and understand. And unfortunately, entrepreneurship isn't even discussed most of the time in a traditional program, and that's tragic because especially now we're losing those jobs that were 30 years and you get a toaster at the end. Like that's going away. And if it hasn't completely gone away already, you have to learn how to think entrepreneurially and find other opportunities. And so many of the students of this generation are learning how to be gig workers and learning how to do a bunch of different things and bring those things together. So I think that's really cool. I'm glad that you're doing that. And I'm glad it's for everybody and not just for the business college.
Yeah. Well, and I think there's a bit of a shift, right? I see more and more of my colleagues talking about that and trying to kind of reimagine and go, okay, can we breathe new life into this program? Or as they're building and starting new programs and shaping it, how do we shape it? So I think there's a little bit of a move in this direction, sort of as a discipline as a whole, which I think is wonderful and, should have happened a long time ago, but better late than never.
Talk about the program you started during the pandemic and because you said it was challenging. So I really want to.
Well, it's interesting. It's interesting.
Sorry.
Yeah, no. So we have a minor in this entrepreneurship program we have here. There's a minor academically. There's no major. And the reason, we don't have a major because in order to get to it, kids would have to take calculus and econ, scares half the campus away kind of a thing, right? So we're not going down that path. But we wanted to have other academic offerings. And so this master's degree really made a whole lot of sense. And so talking to a very good friend of mine, Dr. Jeffrey Stamp, up in Minnesota, and really started to flesh out more and do research more on various types of master's degrees, graduate degrees. We offer an MBA, varieties of MBAs here. And I really started to dig more into this Master of Science degree. And it just made a whole lot of sense because, if you step back, and I may be oversimplifying things here a little bit, but if you step back, for let's say a generic Master of Science degree, it's sort of this project, right? It's sort of a project-based kind of a degree more than an MBA, and so it just made sense. And we said, okay, why don't we do this? And basically the idea is people come into the degree with an idea of, something they want to launch. Maybe they're an entrepreneur trying to start a startup. Maybe they're working at a company and they want to, the company wants them to launch a new product or a new service or, something, right? Maybe it's somebody who just is like, I just want to start this new community of people who like running backwards. I don't know, whatever they want to start. And so we take them through this year-long progression of experiences that also happen to be courses. And the goal is at the end of the year, they launch or don't. And either way is sort of a thumbs up for us, right? Because either you found it and you've launched it, or you figured out this is probably not a good idea for the marketplace or not a good idea for me. And any of those results would be a good result. And so we just, I went through and I said, what kind of things might people need to experience or get access to or become exposed to as they go? And so there's a lot of at the front, it's a lot of kind of design thinking, creativity, those types of things, again, to get them going. There's a whole course on failure, on getting comfortable with failure and what do you do with failure. And another friend of ours, Diana Kander, actually designed that course for us because she's got a ton of expertise in this area. And so, again, this is a course where it's just, we're not going to talk about failure. You're going to fail a lot with your, related to your idea. And you're going to get used to how do you use failure as a tool, as a learning tool, and become comfortable with it. Not that you necessarily like it or want more of it, but at least you understand it's there. And when it happens and when you see it coming, what do you do with that to make it positive, right? And like innovation forecasting and all kinds of fun stuff. So we just really built these experiences, mostly using non-academics. I am one, but I think oftentimes academics tend to ruin things and they kind of suck the practicality out of things a lot of times. And so we somewhat intentionally said, we're going to go find people who are kind of experts outside of academia, and we're going to talk to them and have them build some things. And then we're going to get together with some academics and make sure, that it's appropriate for a master's degree program. So it just was a little bit of a different way to build it. The interesting part of it was we launched in a pandemic. And so instead of having students on campus where we could do all these experiential things, we had kids all over the country because they were at home instead of on campus. So it forced us to be innovative. It's just different, and it's just a different approach. And again, it's a way to say, what can we do differently and how can we find a gap and be able to fill that gap in other types of programs that people offer. And it's not to say that nobody offers a program like this, because they do, but it's not the typical approach. And it fits with our mentality and our thoughts around building programs.
That it's cool because you get a master's degree traditionally you get a master's degree to either level up in your career or to get a new career or a new job. And they're actually getting their master's and potentially creating their new job.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Or it's, it's the fun people at companies, right? Where somebody has said to them or tasked their department or whatever with like, we got to figure out a new kind of toilet paper or whatever. And so like a couple of people need to work on that. And we're basically saying, come to us. I don't know the first thing about making toilet paper or whatever, right? But like, we can put you through these processes to help you with that, and to move it along, all while you get this credential of a master's degree as well, right? And so it's just, again, it's that different approach that I think we found anyway from just talking to people and talking to the marketplace, that there's a lot of interest in that kind of an approach.
Yeah, that's really interesting. And I mean, it's a win-win for everybody. I
think so. I mean, we'll see this fall. We're starting, we'll have our first cohort that's actually on campus, and we can, we started this whole failure course, and one of my colleagues, Alex Bruton, does this thing with riding a unicycle, right? I mean, it's part of a story he tells and all this. And so I said, hey, if we want to kick off a failure course in the right way, I want to get everybody a unicycle, and like your first class, go out in the parking lot and don't come back until you can ride a unicycle. And that'll teach you about failure, right? And the risk management guy goes, no, we're not going to do that. That's not going to happen. But that'd be cool, right? Like that'd be a cool way to be like, this is what it's like about, this is what you're going to jump into. It feels like this.
Fun fact, I used to own a unicycle.
I'm not surprised. Now, well, hold on now. So you owned one, but could you ride the unicycle?
Like for very brief periods of time.
Okay, all right. But you tried. Okay.
We got it at a yard sale. My dad just had to have it, so he brought it home.
Yeah.
Like, what is this? But that's awesome. I'm looking forward to learning more about this backwards running group. I think that might be a fun group to try. You've got some great ideas there.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, to kind of piggyback on that, I know we talked about this last time, but we adore the pieces that we get from teachingentreprenurship.org. And I have looked at lots of the exec curriculum, and at EntreEd we specifically don't have a curriculum because we know so many people that have great stuff, so we try to promote that. So can you tell the audience a little bit more about what teachingentreprenurship.org is, how that came about? And I would advise everyone in the audience to go check out the website, because if you are looking for some cool ideas, that's where it is, baby. They're really, really fun. We've used them in several different places along the way. So
yeah. Well, thank you. And thank you for being a good friend of that entity and effort, and a champion of that. So we very much appreciate it. So it's essentially a couple of us, right? So there's me, Justin Wilcox is out in California, and Federico Mamano is over in Italy. And so the three of us very sort of happenstancely came together, and we have this sort of shared passion around helping people, again, sort of practice these entrepreneurial skills, right? And learn these skills so that they can apply them in their life to do better at whatever they're doing, whether that be entrepreneur in the typical sense, traditional sense of starting a business, or just, being a better employee at company X or whatever. And so, we look at how entrepreneurship education is in higher ed, right? So we're very focused on higher ed, at least at the moment. And we just kind of take it apart piece by piece and try to reconstruct it in a way that is much more experiential, much more engaging for students and professors, is sort of an easier but richer way to assess the experiences that students are having. And so what we put together is essentially a curriculum, right? So it's sort of replacing the textbook slides test bank curriculum with a digital curriculum that's got all the bells and whistles, lesson plans, rubrics, works in any LMS, 15 weeks, 12 weeks, 10 weeks, 8 weeks, online, hybrid, in class. Like we had, you want it, we got it, almost. And it's a very robust, very well thought out, and a number of the things in there are award-winning exercises and that teach skills, period, right? And they teach it's how to identify problems, how to solve problems, how to interview customers, how to prototype and experiment, how to work on financial projections, all these kind of things, how to pitch, tell stories and share your story and all that kind of stuff. So it really is, I'm biased, but I think it's a very powerful way for students to learn these skills and practice these skills, but it's a powerful way. I'm an educator. I use it in my courses. Part of the reason I got so involved was because I needed to build a different experience for my courses, both for myself and my students, something that was more robust and more sort of complete instead of just kind of together things I found on Google or at conferences or whatever. And this is what we've come up with, right? And this is what we landed on. And it's a really, Justin and Federico come from not an academic background, but very successful entrepreneurial background in their own rights, but they have a little bit of an educator in them because they, work in sort of incubators and accelerators and things like that, where they are teaching essentially and coaching. And so we put all that together with some of my more traditional academic background, and I think we came up with something pretty good.
Yeah, the things that we've used, I've never not had a blast, and I've used them with little guys a few times, which is shockingly amazing. How like the 60-minute MVP,
yeah, how
younger kids can take that, like adapt it a little bit, down to their level, but
right,
incredible what they can do.
Yeah, and it's through teachingentrpreneurship.org is a blog that we keep up where we share a lot of free resources and stuff that's separate but a part of the exec curriculum. And that's part of what we want to do is share these things with the world, right? And we share lesson plans and we share other people's work that they're playing in the same sort of sandbox, because I think whether you're teaching college or high school or middle school or adult, entrepreneurs or whatever, I mean, these things are really applicable and can be used in a variety of settings. And I think it makes sense to share them as far and wide as we can. And almost all of what we do is really meant to be, this standalone, pretty quick and easy to like grab and do, right? And so it's, 60-minute MVP. How do you get people building an actual MVP website in 60 minutes? There's like a 1 hour coding, 1 hour app without coding exercise, right? So it's like within an hour, you got an app that's functioning that you can start testing out with people to see if they're interested in what you're selling, right? So it's stuff like that you can just grab and go. And I don't think there's enough of that out there that people are sharing that kind of a stuff. So it really is a pleasure to be out in the front of that, just sharing and putting that out into the world.
Well, it's hard to when you're a teacher and you're looking for something and you can I can pull some things off of the blog, but then I know if I want something more robust, I have an example of how good it is. So then I know if I want to transition over to the curriculum, the whole kit and caboodle, then I know what I'm getting. So that's really helpful because a lot of these things out there, you don't really know if it's going to be worth it. So we definitely support everything you're doing with that because we think that it's amazing and
cool.
It's needed. You need to have those. Just the idea of teachers getting over that hump of letting the students have a little more control and letting the students take ownership for what they're doing is, once you get past that, you find out that it's so much more interesting, exciting.
Well, and it's scary, right? Even if you are 100% behind the belief that that's the direction you want to go, if you've never really done that, it's a super scary thing to do, and especially if you're not necessarily of that belief, it's even a scarier thing to do. And so that's, the other reason why we try to test things out with varieties of populations and we put on different kinds of events and little conferences and sessions and stuff just to test things out, but also to kind of plant seeds in people to go, this is kind of what it feels like, right? And this is Like, it's not as scary as you think it might be. And try this, right? You don't have to go like flipping your whole entire course around, but try this, try this, try this. Take little nibbles. And, if it is for you, awesome. If it's not for you, don't go there, right? Like, you're doing yourself and your students a disservice if it's not for you. But if it is for you, there's a variety of different ways to engage. And I think that's part of what we try to create, is this community of people who are trying to do the same sorts of things and can support each other and share with each other. And then I think everybody wins.
Yeah, it really is. It really is great curriculum and great materials. And so everyone go check it out. I'll put them in the show notes.
Teachingentreprenurship.org. That's your gateway in.
But it's really cool. We did, it's amazing what students did a little kind of a mini course for students during the pandemic. Again, not really a curriculum, but something teachers could take and use really quickly, virtually or whatever. And just the feedback from it being it's completely experiential. It's, from idea to pitch to launch, essentially. And the feedback from students is just, this was the most fun thing I've done all year. This was really, because it's 100% them. And
yeah, absolutely.
I think that's what that makes the difference. We need to do
absolutely.
So, oh, awesome. So tell me about the food buggy, and I want to know what blue streak chicken is.
Yeah, so food buggy actually came along. It was an idea of Sister Catherine Feely, works at John Carroll and runs our Center for Service and Social Action. Does a lot of things. One of the main things is coordinating all the service learning that happens. It's a Jesuit school. There's a ton of service learning that goes on in the community. So she's always wanted a food truck, for a long time. So the short version of the story is now she has a food buggy. So instead of a food truck that maybe, whatever, right? You use $50, $60, $70, $80, $90, $100,000, lots and lots of money to get an actual full-on food truck. There's a guy in town here who makes food buggies, who can get us a food buggy. And so it's significantly less cost. Let's say $25,000 maybe. And this is, pulled behind a trailer, 2 people fit in it. It's got, refrigerator and sinks and all that kind of stuff. But part of the cool difference is, at least with ours, a lot of the equipment to make the food is all countertop. So you can kind of mix and match, right? So you're not locked into, I only have these couple things, right? We can mix and match it. And so, as with everything, there was a pretty good delay in the whole process due to the pandemic. And so we actually just finally launched it officially in the spring semester. We had a little bit of a test run on campus, and we were trying to get some stuff going in the community, but county health department, you know how they can be. They're not very entrepreneurial. They have rules, and they're pretty much like, nope, you're going to follow the rules, and there's no gray area to the county health department. But no, so part of what we do is we partner with local organization in town here who prepares all the food for the homeless shelters around Cleveland. They are the commissary, so they're doing all the food for us. And then the goal is for students to run the buggy as a profitable social venture, and then to use the profits to feed homeless off of the buggy. And hopefully it's accomplishing a couple things. Number one, hot meal, right? For people who want to pay for it, but also hot meal for people living in homelessness, but also some dignity, so that they actually can choose food off a menu instead of just, here's some food that was donated to us and there's nothing wrong with that, right? But this is a chance to say, I get to choose what food I want, and I get to choose what I want on that hot dog or whatever it might be. And it gives our students a chance to engage and have some conversations and fellowship and all those kind of things with the population living on the margins, which is, again, part of the mission of the school. And so it really just kind of checks all these boxes, and lots and lots of excitement for this up and down the chain of leadership, in our alumni base and in and around Cleveland. So the chicken, the blue streak, it's chicken sausage, right? So we're the blue streaks, John Carroll blue streaks. So it's chicken sausage. So when we were doing this event, the first times we were serving up just hot dogs and chicken sausage kind of stuff. just to kind of test the process out. That would have been really fun if it was actually blue chicken sausage.
I was just trying to picture it in my head.
Although I don't think people would want to pay like a premium price for blue chicken sausage. That might be a little sketchy. But we're super excited. In the fall, we're going to like partner up with our homecoming, and some stuff on campus. And then, we've got some community partners where we're going to take the buggy out to them and really just kind of test this thing out. And we've had what's really interesting is we've had some interest from a couple other universities, colleagues of mine at a couple other universities saying, hey, how can I get my hands on one of those? And then we can have a little bit of a competition.
Ooh.
Right. And so I don't know if that'll ever happen. We're kind of working on logistics and all that kind of thing, but it would be really neat if we had, let's just say there were 10 schools who had one of these buggies, and, every semester students are operating these things and they're trying to make a profit, but they're also trying to execute on this social mission. And, they could sort of be learning from each other at these schools all over the country. That'd be kind of neat if we could make it happen.
Would be cool. Get like a leaderboard and everything.
Yeah, right. I mean, and that's how we look at things, or I look at things anyway, is to say, if there's something that's good, how can we scale it and offer the opportunity to others, right? And so if it's possible, we try to do that, and if it's not possible, then we just do what we do in our corner of the world.
I love this. I love this idea. I love the idea that there's a food buggy. That just sounds so cute.
It is. It really is. I mean, if you see this thing, right, it's. I mean, there's about two of me. I'm like 6'4", 170. I'm not huge, but I'm big. But it fits about two people in there, so it's small. It's tight quarters. But you pull it behind a truck or a van, and it's pretty mobile.
You need to go hit up some of the little league fields and stuff.
Yeah, well, and that's part of this thing is there's little league fields, there's after proms, right? You start thinking about like, oh, here's all these things. And for the university's perspective, the marketing tool to say, oh, going out to recruiting events and, high school events and all this kind of thing, trying to enroll students and recruit and all that. Here's a John Carroll food buggy. And you know what? No other school that's coming to visit you has one of these things. And if you're a student at John Carroll, you might be a person who's actually running this as a business. That's part of how you'll learn entrepreneurship. Like that's a pretty cool experience.
That's way more fun than the standard recruiting. The sad student has to stand there and say the same thing all day long. And now you can like have a hot dog and chat.
Yeah, right.
That would sell me right there.
Exactly. At least you'd remember it, whether you show up or not, and choose John Carroll or not. At least you're remembering it. You're planting seeds. So.
Yeah. All I got from these other colleges was a leaflet and like a foam finger, but I got a blue streak chicken from John Carroll.
See, there you go.
I love it. That's awesome. So I'm excited. So you guys, you do so many different philanthropic things. Talk about the neighborhood project that you started as well.
Yeah, this one's big. And so, we are this Jesuit school. There is this sort of rich history of engaging with the community and giving of time and talents. And the phrase, I'm new to these Jesuit schools, but the phrase, you hear is being men and women for and with others, right? And so serving with others and giving your time, talent, energy, resources, all that. So a lot of that happens. And so Verizon Foundation, long story, came up and gave us a little bit of a grant. And so we used that grant to start. We identified one neighborhood that's very close to campus, where they're facing a lot of the struggles that poverty heaps onto, sort of systemic poverty heaps onto a neighborhood and the people who live and work there. And so we just started to engage with residents there and trying to say, what's life like, and not. So the analogy I use is a hammer and a nail, right? So instead of coming in with a hammer, trying to hit every nail with that hammer, we basically come in and say, let's figure out what the nails are that are sticking up and then go find the right hammer to hit them with. And maybe we have the hammer and that's great. And if we don't, let's help you find the hammer that you need that's going to be best to hit that nail, right? And so again, we started this during a pandemic. So we had some students in the neighborhood and other folks in the neighborhood that did a lot of legwork and a lot of just kind of research in the neighborhood, trying to understand and learn more about the neighborhood. It's a very slow process because there's no trust at all, right? For John, for me, or any of these other folks. And so a lot of this is building trust and developing that relationship. And that just takes a long, long time. And it takes showing up, which again is difficult to do during a pandemic. So we're working on it. But one thing we did do, a couple things we did do. One was a walkability assessment. And so we had a firm out of Akron, Ohio, a little south of us here. And they walked the entire neighborhood and every street corner, and they captured GIS data and photographic evidence of all of the infrastructure in the neighborhood. So the streets, the sidewalks, the litter, the lighting situations, streetlights and safety and all that kind of thing. The greenery, overgrown lots, that kind of thing, structures, are structures in good shape or are they kind of abandoned or whatever. And they mapped out the entire neighborhood. And so there's this tremendously rich website, interactive website that anybody can go to and look in this neighborhood and go, they can sift, sort, filter everything and go, okay, where are the points in this neighborhood where the sidewalks are really, really bad? And let me see photographic evidence of that, right? So this isn't just some random, here's a bunch of data points. And so part of what that does is helps to inform a lot of efforts, whether it's from the city or community folks trying to do various projects in the community. And so there's a rich resource there of really interactive and deep data. And then the other thing we're doing is an activity book. And so it's kind of like, remember Highlights, the magazine Highlights, right? So it's kind of like a digital highlights. Again, I'm oversimplifying here a little bit, but essentially it's a activity book to get in the hands of kids in the neighborhood. And it has activities, coloring things and all this kind of thing, but it's all about the history and the context of the neighborhood, right? And the goal is to inform a little bit, educate them a little bit about some of the history and people in the neighborhood, but to give the kids a voice of saying, what would you like your neighborhood to look like? So there's like, here's a blank storefront. What would you want to see there? And let them draw it in, right? And, here's a blank park space. What would you want to put in a park space? And here's a blank wall. What kind of picture would you like to see on the wall? And they can do those kind of things. And then hopefully what happens is we can take some of that and we can actually make that a reality, right? So we can put a mural up on a wall that includes elements that some of these kids put in their workbooks, in their activity books. And then they can walk around the neighborhood and go, I did that, right? That's my stuff up there. Or they can be a part of designing a park, or they can be a part of designing a storefront or any, just stuff like that, right? And they can nominate community champions. And so it becomes, again, this really rich resource of resident, and in this case, more children than adult, but resident voice to help inform us and just say, here's the kind of things that people who live there and are there on a day-to-day basis all day, every day, are saying that might make a difference. And then we go, okay, how do we do that? So it's again, a little bit of a different approach because I tell people all the time, like, we really have no agenda and we don't, right? The only agenda I have is I'm a member of this John Carroll community. I've been privileged enough to sit in this position of sort of power and privilege and access to resources. And so how do I use those responsibly for the benefit of others, right? And that's it. That's the agenda. And so it really involves observing, engaging, listening, watching, trying, failing, right? You make a misstep, right? Say the wrong thing to the wrong person, or you miss a meeting that whatever, right? Things happen. And so you got to learn from it. So it's been a really, really fascinating journey so far. And ideally, what I'd love to have happen, this would be super cool. This scares the pants off a lot of administrators, but what would be really cool is if when freshmen come in, right? And I'm not saying this has to happen at John Carroll, but if freshmen come in and an entire freshman cohort starts to work in one neighborhood, and they work in that same neighborhood for all 4 years, for like all of their experiential learning happens in that neighborhood. So let's say at John Carroll, there's a class of 700 students, right? Imagine what could happen if 700 students spent 4 years devoted to working in, whatever you want to say, one neighborhood. Like imagine the transformation that happens for the people living and working in that neighborhood and for the students, right?
Wow.
Yeah. And then the next group comes in, right? The next freshmen come in and they partner up with a different neighborhood. And the next freshman class comes in and they partner up with a different neighborhood. And so it's like one by one, instead of breadth of trying to like serve an entire community, it's depth, but it's depth in a different place each year, if that makes sense, So logistically, I have no clue how that happens, but it'd be a really cool thing.
That would be amazing. And it would build, that's where that trust building happens too, because they know that this person isn't just one and done and
right.
See them again. They can start to build relationships within the community and really, after a year in, they could make, really cool things could happen.
Oh yeah. Well, and just like as a student, right, when you're learning, it's not just these choppy 15-week or 10-week or 12-week or whatever experiences that have no continuity to them or very little continuity. It's like everything is woven together, right? And it's this one larger context and project. And the learning is so much richer and so much more powerful. And from like an economic development standpoint, these students are way more likely to stick around, right? If they've spent 4 years working in this community and watching what's happened in this community because of their investment, they're so much more likely to stick around, right? And so just like the local community, they're always trying to get kids to stick around, right? Like not get the brain drain. So there's all these like little checks, boxes that get checked for something like that. So if somebody else could figure out the logistics of that, it'd be really cool.
And like just your example with a park or with a storefront, there's enough time for them to see a project all the way through to the end,
right?
And then some. So just that the ability to be able to do that and be part of that the whole way through is amazing. Yeah, that gave me goosebumps. I can't imagine. I hope that works.
Yeah, we're trying, but and here's the really cool thing, right? Is we're using it as a part of our minor, as a part of our master's program, and we're showing these students, like, we're doing what we're trying to tell you should do, and here's what it looks like and feels like in real time that we're doing, right? So as we're trying to teach you this and coach you and mentor you through this experience, we're not just talking at you about it. Like, we're knee deep in it over here. So it allows us, and it's very much aligned, with the mission of the university, right? So again, it's checking all these boxes, but it really allows us to build trust with our students, right? And to because we can say to them, like, we're trying to do the same thing we're pushing you to do. And so it's not that hard of a thing to do. It's not that bad of a thing to do. We'll be right there with you. And I think that makes a big difference when we're talking to students and trying to push them a little farther outside of their comfort zone, right? Because we're going, well, that's what I'm doing over here.
Wow. Well, that's the way education's supposed to be.
I think so. Depends on who you talk to, but I think that's what it should be all about.
Just imagine how much that on both sides of it, how much the students would learn and how much the community would get from having those students there. And
right.
They could be in the schools, they could do all kind. Oh my gosh, that just sounds like incredible. I don't know.
Well,
how could I help?
Yeah, well, and I think, one of the really difficult things, and again, this goes to building trust in relationships, is, there's this sort of outside entity that's coming in, and we literally are coming in and saying, like, we don't have an agenda. We just want to know about you, and we just want to know about, your lived experience, and we just want to, sort of work not for you and not heap, ideas upon you, but we want to just kind of work with you and be alongside you. And it's just a different approach. And so, there's a lot of work to be done to lay the foundation so that, we're able to do that, because it really is sort of having the permission of the people that we're trying to work with. So it just takes a long time, and that can be a little frustrating to the entrepreneur in me, right? I'm like, damn, let's go, right? And it just doesn't work that way in this context. So it's also a humbling experience for me personally and professionally, just because it's so different than what other things I've done, in the past. But it's really special. I mean, and I think it's almost more than anything else I'm involved with, I think has the potential for really big and deep and meaningful impact.
I think so too. That's just incredible. It's very true though, when a lot of times, especially, like we deal with a lot of rural communities, and you go in and like, they're so used to people coming in and saying, we've got the solution for you.
Right.
And it falls on deaf ears, because the people are like, well, who are you to come in here and tell me what my problem is, and that your solution is going to be the one that fixes everything. And it's a little, demoralizing too, when you do that. And so to work with the community to build that trust and figure out how you can plug into their situation. I think that's where it's at. But I can see that it takes a long time.
It does. But I think that's part of why, I look at it and go, here's a challenge, right? And I think there's a lot of people who try this kind of work, and for whatever reason, funding runs out, or energy runs out, or people change positions, or, whatever the case may be, right? It sort of ebbs and flows, and that's part of what's created some of the situations that plague some of these neighborhoods. So again, I see it as this challenge to go, okay, the institution I'm representing and working for here, it's not going anywhere. It's not like one day we're going to not have a supply of these young people anymore, and we're not like we're going to have a supply of these alumni anymore. So it's like we have these resources that are just going to be there, right? And I think even just that in and of itself is a really different thing to bring to the table, right? To go there, if we can work out and build this relationship, there really can be a sense of permanency here with this partnership. So that's kind of what we're looking at. And it's long-term, right? It's this very long-term idea and long-term plan and vision and goal and all that. So we'll see what happens. But it's fun so far. And again, it's all been pandemic, right? Which is really strange. And so I've got a lot of people, students, myself, a lot of other people who are really excited to go, I just want to put my boots on the ground in the community, right? Like I've talked to all these people on a screen, but I've never met them. And so that'll be really cool.
Yeah, it'll be really cool. I just hope everything goes well in the fall. with your effort, with all the efforts.
Fingers crossed.
Oh my goodness, I can't take another one of these. So just can't.
No.
I lose my mind completely if I haven't already lost it.
The little strands that we have left are just going to snap.
Holy moly. Oh, well, Doan, this has been so much fun. I kind of have the one wrap-up question, because we do have a lot of educators from all different levels, actually.
Yeah.
Listen to the podcast. What advice might you give somebody that really wants to dive into more experiential types of teaching entrepreneurship? What could they do to get started? Or what would one piece of advice be that you'd give them?
Yeah, so really bite size. I work with a lot of people, and I talk to a lot of people who try to do too much. And so it's really overwhelming for them, and it falls apart, and it's just not a good experience for them or for their students, for their administrators, anybody like that. So bite size, start small, take one class period, right? And look at it and go, okay, how do I make this a game? How do I, turn this, these talking points that I'm usually, blabbering about to these students, how do I turn that into some sort of activity? And just start there, right? And don't worry about anything else, because it can get really overwhelming really quickly. And when you have something like that, that's where you reach out to you, to me, to other people in the community, throw something up on LinkedIn or Facebook, wherever you are, and just say, hey, I'm working on this activity for, budgeting. Like, how do I turn this into, a fun kind of experiential activity? Does anybody have any pointers? You're going to get a lot of feedback. Some of it may be garbage. Some of it may be little diamonds in the rough, right? But that's how I'd suggest, right? Just don't worry about, I got to redesign my whole class and I've got to, or design a whole class from scratch. Like, don't do that, because that can be really overwhelming. Start really small, and let your students know what you're doing, and let them know, hey, I'm going to try this. Hope this goes well. We're just going to give it a shot and see. And then after you do it, debrief it with the students, whether it's that period or next class period, and talk to them about how it went, and talk to them about what you thought you'd get out of it, what you thought they'd get out of it, see what they got out of it. And you'll get some feedback on what went well and what didn't. And then, let's say you tried that in the beginning of a semester or a year, whatever type of class period you teach. If it goes well, try it again a little later, right? Pick another one a little further down the road and be like, I'm going to try this again with that. If it didn't go well, pick another one later on down the road and fix what you heard or what you thought or what students say didn't go well. And you just start doing it little by little like that. And before you know it, you're sucked in. Because once you do it and you see the difference in your students and the class, the energy level in class and the engagement level, you can't go back.
It's perfect. It's kind of like the New Year's resolution concept, when people are like, I'm gonna lose 25 pounds and I'm gonna, be more organized and I'm gonna get a budget and I'm gonna, and then by the time you've got 10 things and then it's just too overwhelming. So you go eat a box of donuts.
Well, that's what I do, right? So I go like, I'm not a big fan of resolutions, but you might be like, so instead of me eating 4 ding dongs for lunch, I'm going to eat 3 ding dongs for lunch. That's it. Like, that's where I'm starting.
Just take one little thing at a time and just keep moving forward. So that's great. And I love the idea of debriefing with students. I think that sometimes falls by the wayside, whether it's a time constraint or whatever the situation is. Teachers aren't used to doing that, but that's so valuable when students know that, one, their opinion matters, but they're kind of in it with you. Like, that was awesome. Or that's
right.
stuck. I don't want to do that again, But
well, and whether they're 8 or 18 or 38, right? They have opinions. They have reflections on an experience that happened to them or that they went through. And if you give them permission, they're happy to share those. And there's no richer source of information for how do you do this stuff than that. And so if even if you do you do some exercise, you do some activity and it goes better than you could have possibly imagined, if you don't debrief it, I would say that's almost worthless. Like, if you miss that step, you missed the core of why you do it, right? So, and by the way, if you allow students to have a voice, the whole dynamic changes, right? Regardless of how it went, it could be the biggest, most miserable failure ever. And if you give them a voice and you respect that voice, they're all in for you. And you can try it again, and you could fail 10 times and they'll be like, whatever, it's cool. We learned a lot, because they feel like they had that voice and that ownership. So that's really the big piece. Try it really small nuggets, right? Really bite size, and debrief it. Let the students share their voice and their experience with you, and then respect that. Don't ignore it. Don't dismiss it.
And the bonus part of that is that you're probably going to get some respect back.
Well, in my level, right, in higher ed, unfortunately, it's all about teacher evaluations, right, which is nonsense, but that's a different conversation. But if that's what's important, right, and that's something you focus on, whether your exercise or your classroom experiment was a complete and utter disaster, if you let the students have a voice and you listen and respect that voice, I guarantee you your evals go up.
Yeah, that makes sense. They know
so there's maybe job security involved as well for some people, even though that's not what it should be about, but it is.
Oh, well, Doan, I appreciate you so much for coming back on. This has been amazing. I can't say anything else. I'm just really glad and grateful that you were able to join us on another episode. And maybe I'll put you down for a third episode, like maybe 197 or something.
Anytime. I appreciate it. I love what you do. And I really enjoy the platform that you've got and how you use it, and what you share. And so happy to be a part of it anytime, anyway.
Awesome. And hopefully I can get out to John Carroll sometime and take you out to lunch or something.
Anytime you're in Cleveland, I'm happy to show you the highs and lows of Cleveland.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Doan, and you have a wonderful rest of your week.
You too. Thanks, Toy.
Thanks.